This is Sports Profile, a new idea in sports programming here at Beverly Hills High School. Here's the host of today's program, Jon Cherney.
Hello and welcome to Sports Profile. I'm Jon Cherney and I'll be your host for today's show. Well, now it's time for us to get down to business, and our business is sports. And today's sport is rock climbing. We've lined up some super guests, and here they come now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dusty Stiles and Mike Agnitch.
One of us made it. Here he comes.
Here we go.
Here he comes. That was very pleasant. Ah, good climb.
There you go.
Harder than
How you doing today, guys?
mountain. We're doing fine. It was excellent. Good climb. What a day. Let us settle ourselves, and we'll be happy to chat with you about this most engrossing sport. Don't mind the clank. Well, thank you, John.
Oh, sure. Well, my first question is, why would anybody want to rock climb?
Does seem kind of dumb, doesn't it?
Yeah, right now it does, I have to tell you.
Mike, why don't you tell him? I have two good reasons, John. One is that while you're climbing, you feel tremendous adrenaline. It's very exciting. And two, when you're on that rock and you're concerned about falling, nothing enters your mind. You have ultimate concentration. You feel in tune with the rock, and it's a beautiful feeling. Concentration, absolute concentration.
Concentration.
Mm-hmm. I enjoy the mechanics. I enjoy the snaps and the hooks and the tying of knots and the kind of figuring your way up the rock. I guess in addition to, it's such a neat feeling to go out there. You're out there early in the morning, you put your hands on the rock, and there you go. That's you and it for a couple of hours. And it's just so nice. There's nothing else. It's the same kind of thing, I guess. It's the concentration. Yesterday doesn't exist. Tomorrow doesn't exist. It's this rock until the top.
That's great. How frequently do you do this, both of you?
Well, I try and go as often as I can. Right now I'm trying to get in shape for summer to do some serious stuff out in Yosemite. But, you know, it just depends on the season. During the winter it starts getting real cold and we start thinking about skiing. It's nice to be able to go every weekend. I hadn't climbed, I went a couple of weeks ago, and I'll go again this weekend, but I hadn't climbed in 2.5 years or so. I had an accident and I hadn't felt any inclination to go. And now I'm kind of anxious to get back into it again. It's certainly good for keeping yourself in shape, certainly gets you outside, and I think it's real good mentally and physically.
Mike, is rock climbing an expensive sport to get into?
Well, John, it's relatively inexpensive compared to so many other sports. The rope that we're using here is about $100, and all this gear, well, the minimal amount of gear probably is another about $150. So I'd say $300 would be a reasonable investment to get started.
I see. Now, how long have you been rock climbing?
Well, I've been doing this now about 2.5 years, I guess.
I see.
Fairly consistently.
And Mr. Stiles?
About the same. I guess I started around the same time Mike did and climbed 3 months, 4 months real hard. And then I fell and didn't climb again I was just sort of sitting around waiting, and 2.5 years have passed by and here I am again. And I'm really excited to be back.
Well, as far as falling and accidents are concerned, I know many people, when I bring up that subject and they tell me that they rock climb, is it a very dangerous sport? As far as
it's dangerous in that you can get real hurt, but it's no more dangerous than any other sport. It is actually very well controlled. All the stuff that you see here, all these things have been invented by climbers to protect themselves. All this carabiner system was invented by a climber who was looking for an easier way to go up. They used to take bolts, machine bolts, and stick them into the rock with ropes through them. And then they decided, gee, that's not quite, let's see if we can find a better shape. So they came up with hexes. These are 6 different shapes, 6 different angles, 6 different sizes, and depending on how you place it in the rock and make it stay in, it stays. Now what happens is, if you put this in the rock, hook it in place, and you climb up and you fall down, you won't fall any farther than where you put this.
I see.
So if you put this every, say, 10 feet, 15 feet, you can't fall any farther than just below the last one of these that you put in. The trick is, of course, to make sure it stays. So you're very careful. You put it in, you test it to make sure that it's going to stay in place. And then you should be all right. You'll get some scratches. You know, I got my hand all messed up last weekend. You get some scratches and some bruises. And you wear the tips of your fingers down until they get calloused enough to be able to work on the rock. But for real severe, no. You have to be real tired, and you have to make some bad judgments in order to really be hurt.
Mike, what do you like best about rock climbing?
Well, as I was saying, John, it's really well, I love being outdoors. That's certainly a plus. All the clean air is good exercise, but I enjoy exciting sports. And I'd say you can make rock climbing as exciting as anything else. So it's the excitement, it's the adrenaline, it's the concentration.
Is there a high moment that you remember when in your rock climbing career, as I could say, that comes back to you and stays with you?
I would say, really, it was sort of back when Dusty and I were working towards getting better and better. There was a climb that's out at an area that you'll see some films of, and it was just above our ability. And I remember being very scared, and I must have spent about 45 minutes out on this face with tiny little holds, and wasn't sure if I could make it. But when you push yourself, and you make it, it's a really good feeling. And I think that climb was Overhang Bypass out in Joshua Tree, and I think that climb will stick in my mind for quite a while.
I see.
Mine too, I think, because that was kind of early. And I remember a little later in that same climb, there's a section where you have to go hand over hand with nothing under your feet and then haul yourself up over the edge, and you can't see what's ahead of you. If you haven't done the climb before, you have not the foggiest notion if there's anything to hang on to when you finally reach. You hope there's something there. And I started to make that move and decided it was just more than I wanted to do. And Mike did that one. And I remember that as being, gee, I wish I had done that, and I'm glad I wasn't dumb enough to try it anyway.
You guys look like you're in really good shape as far as for rock climbing. Does someone who wants to get into it, would you advise to them for them to get into conditioning as far as that goes?
No, I'd tell them to climb first, find out what they can do, find out if they want to do more. If they do want to do more, then yeah, get into as much condition. Don't climb something that's harder than you can climb. There's a rating system, and once you know where you are on the rating system, then you can identify a climb in terms of whether it's too hard for you or not. It is nice to be. Mike is doing stuff to keep himself in shape, and I'm starting to drop some weight and do exercise regularly because I want to get back into it, and I want to have a good time, which means I need to be fairly strong to do it.
That's terrific. You were mentioning your experience, Mike, at Joshua Tree. Could you tell us a little bit more about it?
About the area?
Yeah.
Well, it's a nice place to climb in the winter, John. It stays warmer. It's in the high desert. The rocks are excellent for bouldering, and it's varied enough that it offers something for almost every level of climber. It's one of the best places to go in Southern California. In terms of sort of the Cadillac of areas to go for climbing, we have here in California one of the best in the world, and that's Yosemite Valley. And we get, you go into Camp 4, which is the rock climbers' camp, and you'll find climbers speaking German, climbers speaking Spanish and French and Japanese. They come from all over. So we're fortunate to have that within an 8-hour drive. We have in Southern California again an area out in the San Jacinto Mountains called Talkeets, which is in Idlewild, and that's about a 1,200-foot rock with I would say 30 or 40 different routes on it. And then for the person who's debating whether or not they really want to get into climbing, out in the San Fernando Valley there's Stony Point. It's a sandstone rock. On a Saturday or Sunday you'll find 30 or 40 climbers out there, so they can kind of give you a few pointers and such. But I really wouldn't recommend someone going out with ropes and gear and tackling some some big climb, because it is very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, and you should have proper training.
Okay, when was it when you went out to Joshua Tree? When was this?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us about going out there and going out with the film crew and everything?
Sure. A whole crew. It was nice to have enough people to do the job. Mike and Herman's Mike's current climbing partner, went out, and I and my wife, Barbara, and Mike's wife, Pat, and Joe Aldeski, one of the media students from here. And we shot Super 8, and we shot video, and we shot slides, and we climbed all day. And it was we did that for 6 hours. It was very pleasant.
Well, why don't we take a look at some of that stuff?
Okay, we should look and see.
Terrific.
See, now this tape is put together in such a way that it kind of it more demonstrates various kinds of moves than it does show a specific climb. Okay, you walk up. Normally, you walk up to the climb. Some of them you have to hike in. There's Herman getting out his gear, his shoes,
Yeah, we're about to climb this wall right behind Herman here.
his rack. That's the harness with all the gear on it. And Mike's going to start a climb.
Yeah, this is an interesting climb. As you can see, Dusty is up on the rock somewhere, and I'm heading up some friction, and then I'm going to go over to a crack. Notice my fingers are white. I'm carrying a chalk bag there. The chalk adds a little extra friction to your fingers, gets rid of some of the moisture. This is called a layback. I'm laying back on my arms, and in doing so, increasing the friction that my feet are feeling against the rock, so I can, in essence, walk up it.
Then you get to a resting place. You get to a place where you're safe. Then you put in a piece of protection.
Yeah, this is a unique little piece called a friend. It goes in very easily.
Locks into place.
Yeah, climbers don't hammer things into the wall. At least they try not to. It destroys the rock. So this piece fits in there nicely, doesn't harm the rock. I clip it to my rope, and I'm ready to climb on a little further. Again, laying back, trying to keep my arms relatively straight, my feet up underneath me. Now I'm getting to the top of this flake here, and there's a bolt on this climb. This is a climb that's been done before, and different groups or individuals will set up a new route, and there's no crack to use there, so they had to put a bolt right into the rock. The bolt remains. I clip my carabiners in there, and now clip my rope to it, because there's about 3 delicate moves that I have to do out on this bare face to get to a little more secure position there. And here I'm looking for slight changes in the angle of the rock, and they're very small.
Again, I can see the ultimate concentration that goes into it.
Yeah, you've really got to think. There you can see I'm trying to find just little changes where the angle may just be a few degrees different. Yeah, getting up a little higher, and there is supposed to be another bolt up there somewhere.
Somewhere. The rope should go in a fairly straight line from you to your belay person at the bottom. If it doesn't and it begins to jam up, then you have all the rope weight to pull along with everything else. Herman's down there feeding rope out as Mike goes up.
Yeah, I know that bolt's there somewhere.
You actually find it at the end of this segment.
There
See?
we go.
There it is.
Yeah.
Now I'm going up a crack, and I'm going to put a nut into the crack in such a way that it won't pull out. Hook my carabiner in, hook my rope into the carabiner. And I'm doing a layback too, only I don't have a flake here. I have just a crack to haul myself against. Drop another hex in and hook into the carabiner and climb from there. And the rope is flexible enough so that it is not going to drag and jam. Now I'm going to do a hand jam. I'll stick my hand in there and squeeze and make a fist, and then pull against it, and that keeps me from sliding out. There's nothing in there to hang on to, so that's a straight hand jam.
I imagine you scrape up your hand.
That's how I got my hand scraped up, yeah. It's fun. You don't even feel it till later.
Till later.
Here's Herman. And this is a pretty classic chimney here. He's pushing his feet and his rear end in opposite directions there, increasing the friction that he has with his feet, and just walks right up that rock. It's relatively easy as long as the rocks are opposing each other. When the angles begin to change, then it gets more difficult.
You can see behind him it gets smaller, and that's where he has to go later on in the climb, and it gets to be quite a squeeze.
Here he's putting a little protection into a crack that's above him, and trying to make sure that that's going to save him in case he falls.
How tall is the mountain there?
This particular climb is about 200 feet, so it's not terribly long climb. Notice he tests the protection, make sure that that will hold. And he starts moving on up.
Oh, viewers!
The place is full of other climbers.
Now,
This is a mantle.
Yeah, this is a tricky move.
This, you reach up and haul yourself up over the edge.
You can see the strength required for this. He has to hold on with strictly his arms.
That's why Mike is
Wow.
doing 40 chin-ups at a pitch. You can see his carabiners clipped in. If he falls, he's not going to fall farther than those carabiners, but he's at the bottom anyway, so it doesn't amount to too much.
Now he's looking for a very tiny handhold up there.
Delicate balance, very nice.
Notice that chalk bag. I'm belaying him here. This is a very delicate move. He's virtually standing on nothing. And notice that left hand moves very quickly to gain a little more support.
Now he's going to go on up. When he gets to the top of this pitch, he'll tie himself in. And he will then protect Mike as Mike climbs up the same route. And Mike will take out all of the carabiners and so forth that Herman has put in.
It's important when Herman's above me now. I have to wait for certain calls. We have certain signals that we use, which are brief and to the point because you can't always hear real well with the wind blowing. So Herman finally gives the word that it's okay to climb. I tell him that I'm climbing, and I begin.
Very important for the people, for the two climbers at both ends of the rope to know what the other one is doing. You do it partly by feel and partly by yelling. And the vocabulary is very small. Only, I guess, a dozen calls. That's it. And you keep them exactly the same. And any climber can climb with any other climber because the calls are the same.
I'm following it on up, and I'm taking out the gear that Herman placed in. We now switch leads, and
Mike is going to lead on. He's going to go up over the edge of this. This is the top of that climb.
yeah, this is a little precarious and definitely exciting for the person leading the climb. I get a friend up inside that crack, and it should hold. Now I've got to go out over my head. I'm laying out backwards over the rock, trying to get a hand jam and then try and reach, find a hold up in there. And you're getting tired because all your weight's on your arms now.
It's incredibly tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. Once you commit,
There we go. Swing out.
you got to keep
Yeah,
going.
you gotta keep going.
It would be a long fall right now. I'm about 200 feet off the ground. If that protection ever did let loose.
And there you are.
Excellent.
Amazing.
And then getting back down again is the classic rappel. And you'll notice we don't swing down. We don't do the big long leaps. Those are quite dangerous.
Well, they're not only dangerous, but they also will destroy your rope.
Right.
Herman there has a ring in front of him, which causes enough friction to allow him to go down very slowly. If you try to go down very quickly, which you could by jumping out and free falling, you'll burn the rope as soon as you stop. And these ropes are too expensive to ruin that way.
Right. You don't want to.
And here
Play
we
around.
are. Well, okay, let's take a look at some of the equipment that's used for rock climbing.
Good.
Dusty, you have some equipment here. Could you tell us about
Yes, let me first demonstrate the helmet. Very important. I wasn't wearing one of these, and henceforth I do. The neatest thing about the helmet is not that it bumps you against the rock. It holds the heat in your head. Really?
Really?
You get to the top of a climb and you're real hot, but you're also exposed. The wind is blowing, and you got to sit up there and bring the rope up as your partner comes up. And normally you cool off a lot, and we were getting really chilled on the last climb, except I noticed my helmet kept me warm, kept the heat from escaping. So for that I would recommend it more than anything else. There is one problem. You get used to sticking your head into head-sized cracks, and with this you can't get into quite as small places. The rope is real special. The rope is made of long strands in the middle that run the entire length of the rope. It's one piece, a whole bunch of one-piece ropes in there with a wraparound sleeve on the outside. And the sleeve is designed to slide over the rock and to protect the internal sections, which actually do the holding. It's also designed to stretch. If you take a fall on this, it will stretch a little bit, and you get a little bit of a spring action. You don't notice it, but it's there. The shoes are real special. I tried climbing with sneakers, and I tried climbing with hiking boots, and you cannot beat these. They're smooth soled on the bottom so that you get total contact, and they're smooth around the edges, and they come up about 1.5 inches. So you can stick your foot into a piece of rock and then stand on it, and you won't slide out. You won't slide anywhere. You either wear these barefoot, or you wear them with real thin socks and cinch them up real tight, so that this shoe moves only as your foot moves, no more, no less. Incredible.
Terrific. Mike, do you have some stuff that you were going to show us?
Well, we can show you some of our gear here.
Fantastic.
This whole unit is called your rack, your life
Support system?
Yes, is dependent upon the placement of these. We have a number of different kinds. You saw this one earlier. It's called a hexcentric. Comes in all sizes. And we also carry real small equipment.
Right out of here.
Yes, this little piece here is smaller than my thumb. Smaller than my thumbnail.
Yeah, that's a stopper because of its shape.
Yeah, just fits into a crack. And of course, these you saw me place earlier. This is called a friend, and I wish I'd invented it. It fits in a great variety of sized cracks, and the cracks don't have to be tapered. If I put one of these into a crack, I have to make sure the crack is tapered downward so this will fit in the crack. I can put this in any size crack. It fits in quickly, clip my rope to it, and I'm ready to go on right away. So this is a selection, probably more than what you would need really to get started. You wouldn't normally buy friends to get started, but the rest of the gear, maybe $100 sitting there.
Let me show you a variation on these. These are little, I forget what these are called.
Bashies.
Bashies, right. You stick them in, and they're lead. They're soft, and they're designed to conform. They're designed to destroy, self-destruct in effect. Put them in the crack, yank on them, and they change shape to match what it is they're worked into. You have a problem sometimes getting them out, and in order to handle that problem, you carry along what's called a nutcracker. What you do is you stick that in the crack and shove it up and jam it around, so you push it back into the crevice and then lift it out. So this is real handy. The guy following carries a nutcracker so he can clean the route.
You almost have to do a little engineering to climb. This piece right here is called a cam, and you can see that you put it into the crack. Actually, it'd be into the crack, and then as you pull down, it would tend to twist to become wider, and so that would actually jam it into position. So it is kind of fun engineering your way up a climb, trying to find something to fit almost everywhere. We do have pitons.
Right, these are the traditional rock climbing tools.
They're still
important in certain climbs. As I said earlier, we don't want to hurt the rock, we don't want to destroy it for other climbers, but there are places where nothing else will work. And so just pound them in and either clip two through the hole or tie a sling around it and use that for protection. Now the rope would go through there and I'd be fairly secure. Whoever's coming up would also carry a hammer and they would remove it from the rock. We wouldn't just leave it there.
Right. Part of the problem with with these is that once you pound them in, you get them in good and tight, and then to get them out you got to pound them back and forth. And of course that opens up the crack. It makes the crack that they went into wider. So the next guy who comes along has got to have a slightly bigger one in order to do the same job. And you get enough people doing that in the same cracks, and pretty soon there's no crack anymore, there's a big hole.
Right. And of course, for real delicate climbing, see, what we've been describing so far is what's considered free climbing. We never use any of this gear except to keep us from falling.
Right, you don't hang on it.
But there are times when it's just a perfectly blank wall, or times when the crack is so small your fingertips won't fit in it, and that's where you begin to use something like this. This is called a RURP, Realized Ultimate Reality Protection. And you will realize...
Let me see if a carabiner really does fit in there. It doesn't fit in there. What do you put in there?
I haven't tied it yet. I would eventually take some 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch webbing and run it through these holes and make a tiny loop on it. And then this would be very delicately pounded in to the crack. And I would, at that time, use this for direct aid. This is called atria, and this would be clipped into the sling that I might have. Right, if I had hanging off this, I would clip in and actually use this as a stairway to move up the rock. And when I got to as high as I could on this, I would then reach in, take something else, maybe pound into a crack, another piece of protection, actually a piece of aid, and clip in another atria. Pull this one out and walk up this one.
So what he's got is a webbed stairway to the stars.
That's right. So this is direct aid climbing, and it's used on many big walls. In Yosemite Valley, if you're going to climb El Capitan, you would have to do this in a few areas. But aesthetically, it's more it's better to do it clean if you can.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the show today.
Thank
you, John. You got a white hand now.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Well, that about wraps it up for this week's edition of Sports Profile. Special thanks to my guests Dusty Stiles and Mike Agnitch from Beverly Hills High School. And thanks to you for tuning in this week. Next week's sport on Sports Profile is gymnastics. This is Jon Cherney for Sports Profile. Good night.